In this session, we will briefly review what we call optional dimensions. Now, this is ultimately subjective to what subscriptions and what needs each instance and company has within Sage Intacct. But these are typical dimensions that you'll see throughout the system, but in most cases, you won't have a need to use them. If after watching this video, you do feel the need to use one of these optional dimensions, please reach out to discuss in more detail in a one-on-one setting. Here on my screen, I have what we would label as an optional dimension, and we'll go through each one briefly. The most common used optional dimension is the dimension called class. And the reason it's most commonly used is because you will see it in most areas in the system. And it's very common to be next to the location or the department dimension. And the way to use class is really based on individual company needs. And usually it's reserved and used for something that's a one-off or unique, something that might not be typical to your average construction accounting needs as far as departments, divisions, regional locations, but something above and beyond that you want to use. And so what we usually recommend for class is you usually hold off on that, especially up front with the deployment, and leave it on the bench, so to speak, to be used at a later time. As you get further down in your deployment process, you may find a need that is not being met with the out-of-the-box dimensions like departments, locations, things like that, and we can start discussing class in more detail. And usually, like I said, it's something for a one-off. You might have a unique entity that does something completely different, and you want to track something separately. What's nice about class is with the terminology settings in Intacct, you also have the ability to rename this. So a lot of people will end up renaming this class. So of these optional dimensions, this is the most commonly used dimension. Warehouse is another big one. And of course, it really flips over and becomes more of a required dimension if you're subscribed to the inventory module. And it really is a direct relationship and effect to the inventory configuration in Sage Intacct. So chances are, if you do not have inventory subscribed in your instance, you're not going to have a need for warehouse. But if you do have inventory, it is a function that you'll see in the system, and that warehouse dimension will show everywhere in the general ledger as well. Another dimension that you'll see, especially when you're in setting up users, is this dimension called territory. And in most cases, most customers elect not to even explore or set this one up. It is kind of related to the sales aspect of the system. It's very limited in where it shows throughout Intacct, but where you'll find it is you do have the ability to set up some security inside the user setup based on territory. And then inside the customer record, you will see a spot where you can actually assign a customer to a territory. But what we find in Intacct, especially with the construction edition, but again, if you're using general business, you might find a greater need for territory. But in most cases, we are able to do that in other ways in the system. In addition to that, you do always have the ability to create and set up your own user-defined dimensions. This is for a fee. It's not free. You need to pay per user-defined dimension that you need. So this would be a unique, almost a development scenario where you really need a more complex dimension structure layout, and the existing ones that are in the system are not meeting your needs. So you can actually subscribe to one or more user-defined dimensions, call them whatever you want. And that, again, if it's something that you feel you need, speak to the team on that further. In most cases, though, as you've seen in the other videos, dimension are just not a single layer. So the dimensions within the system can be multi-layered. So you can have a lot of parent-child relationships within departments and locations and things like that. So most people find if they need some more complex reporting, they can do it with the out-of-the-box dimensions and also with what's called dimension groups. And if you have not looked into dimension groups, I highly recommend, because that will open up a whole new world to unlimited possibilities of reporting needs. Final dimension I have here on the list is the work order dimension. You won't see this out of the box in the core subscription to construction or general business. You will see it if you are subscribed and have purchased the SFO module, which is the Sage Field Operation for service. And if you do subscribe to SFO, eventually, depending on where you are in your deployment, you're going to see another dimension. It's pretty much a custom dimension built in for you called work order. And that work order will act very similar to a project dimension on the construction side. But now you'll be able to do all kinds of reporting by work orders through your service business inside Sage Intacct. Let's jump out of here and go into the software now and just kind of click around and kind of talk a little bit about where these might be. So if I'm in Sage Intacct right now, you'll notice at top level, you'll have the ability to set up classes. Okay, so you'll see classes, and these are cross-company dimensions, which means these are the 4 main areas that are going to show up pretty much across the system for you. So that's why class becomes that one dimension that we do see some people using. The big thing here is if you want to change class and call it something that makes more sense to you, you do have the ability under terminology to come into here and for class to come in and actually change the name of that field, and it will show up throughout the system. We've used class for some things like coils, for steel coils that people wanted to track in a lot-based inventory. So we actually tracked what we call the master coil, and we changed the terminology and changed the name there. So that is something you could do. Another example would be for the territories. For example, if I go into companies and I go into users, this is where you'll see that user territory security where you can set up, and I don't have any set up here, but you can have multiple territories. And this user can only see customers related to that territory. A lot of people do that and accomplish this just with locations, so it's not as needed. But just to kind of give you a brief overview of where you might see it, if I go into my customer setup in accounts receivable, and I just go into a customer here, and underneath additional information, you'll see a sales rep and a territory ID. So this is where you can define that for the territory as far as that goes. And that will take us through basically this video on optional dimensions inside Sage Intacct. Again, if you need any further detailed information on that, use Ask Richard. If you feel that one of these dimensions is going to be something that you're going to need to use, please reach out to the team to discuss it in more detail and to get it into your deployment process. Thank you.